Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me. So guys, just as a question, does anybody think we're not going to be in a full-blown World War III scenario by the end of the month? Because, I'm convinced this is going to happen now. There's things that are just ratcheting up and there's no turning back. So from today, well, last night actually, Kiev sustained huge, a huge aerial assault from the Russians. There was the Iranian Shahed drones. There was, I think, Iskander missile systems being launched in Ukraine. I think it's interesting that the Russians have targeted Poltava in Ukraine. Now, for those of you who don't know, Poltava is a big gas producing region. Ukraine is the 7th largest gas producer. It could be, up there a lot higher, but I can go into that with a different video. But basically, what happens with the gas production in Ukraine, it's all done by several companies. They don't share. They don't, there's no incentive for them to innovate. There's no incentive for them to try and get more gas out, because all that would be doing is it'd be cheapening their own supply, because it's all about supply and demand. At the moment, their supply is meeting the demand. So to create more supply would lower demand, so you get a lower price for it. So it makes no sense really for the oligarchs who control the gas supply to produce more gas. Anyway, that's a slightly different topic. So as we are now then, guys, the Russians are really pushing hard now. And remember what French President Macron said. He said if the Russians push through the Ukrainian front line, then the French will send troops. So it could be argued right now that the Russians have already pushed through the Ukrainian front line. So I think it's going to be a matter of, just when are they going to call it the front line, and how far are they going to call the front line as being. Remember, in Ukraine at the moment, there's absolutely nothing to stop the Russians pushing through up to the River Dnipro. And yes, there's towns, there's cities, there's fortifications, but they're small. Ukraine's big. You can just go around them. So that's what I think the next game is, and I think the next play is for Putin. He could really drive deep and push up to the River Dnipro. If he manages to do that and make a land corridor, then he will basically cut the country that's already cut in half again. So he's just taking piece and piece after it. And remember, if that happens, Macron said he'll put French troops in Ukraine. And when are people going to just accept, yeah, this is World War III? I'm sure there'll be some, people with normalcy biases to say, oh, it's not actually World War III because those French troops are not under there as the guise of NATO, because they're French Foreign Legion and they don't come under the same banner as NATO troops. Whatever, you can't. Then you've got to look at it from the Russian perspective. NATO have the biggest military exercise that they've had in 30 years right on their doorstep in Poland. Then potentially the French troops could move in with the rest of NATO behind. So if you think about Russian, remember in 2022 when Putin was saying no, we are just doing military exercise drill. It is no problem. We are actually withdrawing from region. And then next thing, the tanks are rolling, people are going into Kiev, and some of the most disgusting things I've ever seen, and I keep mentioning them in Borodyanka, which not enough people talk about what happened in Borodyanka, Irpin, Bucha, all these things, when you understand that's how the Russians were thinking. So the Russians were thinking, right, we'll move all these soldiers up and then we'll tell them it's an exercise, then we'll move in. So obviously from the Russian side of it, the Russian mentality, they're trying to put Western mentality into Russian mentality and Russian mentality into Western mentality. So the Russians will be thinking an attack is imminent. And that's why the Russians are pushing forwards now. And they are really, really driving. So the articles, I'll share these in the description. What is it? Yeah. So this one. So burnt houses, mass attack on Ukraine, May the 8th. And then there's, so here we are, guys. So 20 Shahed drones, which are the Iranian ones. 50 cruise missiles, that's a huge attack. and the Russians have concentrated on the energy infrastructure. If you remember, it's been all over the news that the Ukrainians have been targeting the Russian gas plants, their energy infrastructure. And remember, you know, if these have been caught to be done with NATO weapons, with British weapons, then Vladimir Putin said that he will attack British targets in Ukraine and elsewhere. And this is just the rhetoric that's ratcheting up now. And we're moving forwards now at this pace. And what I was going to do on this video, I was going to say that the next thing to come would be for each side to dispel the ambassadors from their country. And then literally I looked on the news. Where are we? Russian diplomat to be expelled by UK for spying, says James Cleverly. The UK is expelling Russia's defence attaché deemed to be an undeclared military intelligence officer. Everybody in the embassies is at some point an intelligence officer, without doubt. You know, there's nobody there that's not gathering intelligence. That's what they're there for, you know, and everybody knows that. So somebody put in the comments as well, could this have something to do with the stopping or closing down the border force? It could well have something to do with closing down the border force. The article, not the article, but the thing that comes to the fore of my mind is back in the 2014 Russian invasion of Ukraine, Russia was bringing in humanitarian aid, and people were saying, "Whoa, you can't bring that in," because nobody trusted the Russians. Anyway, OSCE, which was like the international monitoring body, or whatever you call them, they were basically moving around and they were checking what was viable and what was not. So OSCE, they went to inspect these vehicles. So the vehicles themselves, they were like, you know, you can look at this online. They were like flatbeds, and in the back of them they had, you know, they were all painted white. They had some sleeping bags, but the thing was, they were huge, big trucks, and inside each truck there might have been 10 cases of water or something, or 20 sleeping bags. And OSCE were like, right, we don't get how, right, but okay, well, it is humanitarian aid, so yeah, come in. So the Russians brought all these trucks in. I mean, it was fair play to Putin. It was quite a cool move. It was quite classy, actually. So Putin brought all these trucks in with humanitarian aid, with, you know, and he totally fooled the West. He totally fooled the, the international inspectors. Once he got in, I don't know where the humanitarian aid went, but what did he do? They literally stripped out a weapons factory, one of the only places that could build, I think it was small arms ammunition, because the Ukrainians, they use 545 ammunition, which is 5.45 ammunition, which is basically, I don't know how else to explain it. It's 5.45 millimeter. And it's not readily available in NATO stocks, or it wasn't. So the Russians, they just took all that factory, put it in the back of the trucks, and then drove it back to Russia. Guess what? No checks on the way out going back to Russia. Nobody thought about checking them back into Russia. And, you know, this is what you've got to think about when you're thinking about the Russians and how they play. They're very deceptive, and you just can't trust them. So, yeah, so that's what I'm thinking about with that, you know, the Russian coming up with a 4D chess move. So that's basically what's happening at the moment. And I really don't see us getting to the end of the month without at the very least, and I will be very surprised if this happens. At the very least, there would be another mass escalation in fighting, because at the moment, the way that the Russians are pushing, there's no way that the Ukrainians can hold them. And remember what Macron said: if they break through, if Zelensky asks, we'll move forwards. So that is literally the way we're going at the moment. One thing I will mention about OSCE though, when they were out there in 2020, OSCE is they went out there and they were there to be impartial, and they were to monitor the Minsk agreement and to make sure that the ceasefire was happening. I was also out there in that time, and both sides, so the Russian side and the Ukrainian side, they had these blocked, is that locked, I think, a locked Facebook, a private Facebook group basically, where only certain people can go on and there's restrictions. But they were both on it, you know, and they used to talk to each other. And they would tell each other when the OSCE was around. So in that area, they'd stop fighting. And then when the OSCE had gone, they said, yeah, they've gone now, and they'd start fighting. And, you know, and another thing that I just think, you see, I like to bring things down to human levels, to like what's actually happening. Because David Cameron and Rishi Sunak and, you know, and what's his name in America? That Joe Biden, I forgot his name. Joe Biden, soon to be Trump. You know, they don't really have a context of what's going on at the ground. And unless you can understand what's going on the ground at a ground level, you can put all the policies in place in the world, and you can say all the, you know, you can have all the diplomatic posturing and the threats. Ultimately, if the guys on the ground don't want to do it and they won't do it, then it's pointless. So you have to understand what's happening on the ground. Anyway, so you've got this Facebook group, and both sides were talking on it, and it always makes me laugh because they used to have a ceasefire at 12 o'clock so they could have their lunch. And I just think, you know, it just shows you that, you know, both sides have common values, not wanting to get shot while they're having their lunch. And I think as well, if there's any chance of peace, we have to find these common values. And I always say to people, if we're, you know, I've had to negotiate and deal with some rather unsavory people, you know, I always bring it down to one thing, and you can always guarantee on this. Everybody wants to look after their kids, no matter where you are, who you are, what your background, what your ethnicity, what your religion. Everybody, bar none, wants to look after their kids. So that is all, you know, that's always a good starting block. But anyway, that's slightly off topic to what we're talking about. Yeah, guys. Nice cheery one for you on what are we on a Wednesday afternoon. World War III has moved another step closer, and I don't see any way out of it now. Guys, let me know in the comments. Do you see a way out of this as a world war? Because I genuinely don't. Remember, that's the ones to watch for, guys. I was going to say the one to watch for is the diplomats being expelled from countries, but it's already happening, so I can't really say that's the one to watch for. The one to watch for after that would be the embassy staff being closed and a blackout. And once that blackout happens, that means they're formulating their plan, and they're gonna, you know, something catastrophic's gonna happen. And the backdrop to all this is Putin's testing his tactical nuclear weapons. Guys, we are so close to somebody pressing that big red button. It's unbelievable. But anyway, guys, I'm not going to keep you for any longer. That's 12.5 minutes almost. If you like videos like this, please give us a thumbs up, give us a like, and give us a share. It really helps us out when you do that. And I'm going to put some videos up here that you guys are recommended to watch. And I hope to see you tomorrow, if we've not been annihilated.